Share while.
And we're live. Oh, there's Shanae. She's jumping on. Hey, everyone. It's Suzaida Aaron with our amazing guest, Michelle Masters. And Shanae is going to be jumping on here in a second. I see her arriving.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Can you guys see me? Oh, hello. Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
So excited for today.
And we're live. And so I'm going to go ahead and do introductions. So again, for you guys that are meeting us for the first time, my name is Suzaida, and I'm here with my amazing co-hosts, Aaron and Shanae, and we have an incredible guest for you guys. We're going to talk money magic. We have Michelle Masters. She's internationally recognized all across the world she's internationally recognized all across the world for her amazing work doing neuro-linguistics programming. She's a practitioner of that and a teacher of it. And she's been in that space for more than 25 years now, Michelle, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
And she's also known as the coach's coach because she has worked and trained some of the top coaches in the world. And one of the things that she is wildly popularly known for is her workshop called Money Magic. So super cool. And what's really unique and awesome about her work is that she combines NLP with family constellations. And so we're going to learn what those two mean with quantum healing modalities. So we're going to learn about that as well. And one of the things I've come to learn about Michelle is that there are countless testimonials about how impactful and how transformative her work is. And so we're so blessed and so fortunate to be able to have her here with us today.
Thank you.
Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
Hi. So nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Now, we're gonna dive right into it. I feel like the introduction of Michelle kind of like says it all. Plus, you're just gonna feel how authentic she is, and you're just gonna feel that in her energy. So Michelle has in her tagline, "Change without struggle."
Yeah.
Michelle, please tell us about how to change without struggle.
Yeah, because change seems so hard, right? And that's because, I can dive right into talking about why change is hard and then what actually makes change. But there's three main things that make change so hard. I don't know. Do you want me to just dive in or?
Yeah, please dive into it.
Okay.
Pause 1 second. I'd like to tell our audience, if you guys have questions, put them in the chat and we'll be happy to filter them in to Michelle. So get engaged, ask your questions, pop in your comments, whatever is coming up for you, just put it out in the comments, and it's going to be an amazing interview.
Thank you. Well, let me just say to start, as human beings, we exist in a three-dimensional world with cause and effect. We also exist outside of time and space and in a quantum realm, right? But let me start first with the 3D, what seems to be our physical reality. Because most of what, say most to be polite, but most of what determines what you experience is a result of filtering that happens in your brain. Mm-hmm. And I cannot stress this enough. And when we think of our brain, we think of it as a singularity, like it's one thing. Mm-hmm. You know, that big gray wrinkly thing. It's the one thing where you get more credit for the more wrinkles you have. We think of that as our brain, but it's not one brain. It's like 3 or 4 brains kind of slapped together with duct tape and chewing gum, and they don't really communicate very well with each other. Mm. It is a little like the US Congress. Like one part does not necessarily know what the other is up to, and if it does, it's suspicious of it. This is sort of how our brain works, actually.
Oh, wow.
So we think of our brain as the cerebral cortex, the big shiny lobes we're so proud of. But that's what does things that are so human, right? Imagination, meaning, creativity, consequences. Like we're the only ones who really do consequences. I have 5 pets. I will tell you, they don't really sort for consequences.
Right.
And time. We're the only creature to do time in a linear fashion. That happens up here. This is why you will never see a chicken with a day planner. Not gonna happen. So
I'd love
that's
to
what we
see
think
us
of
without a day
brain.
planner.
But this part that we're so proud of is not fully developed until somewhere between the age of, well, for women, 20 to 25. For men, somewhere between 25 and 30. Or as my friend Carl says, somewhere between 30 and death. Like, it's the last part of the brain to come online. And this is why, by the way, they don't try to draft men into the military after 25, because their brain can compute consequences. It's also why you have to be 25 to rent a car, because the brain just doesn't compute consequences very well. I had been teaching this for years, and we went on a Jeep tour in the American Southwest in Sedona, and we were the only ones on the tour, so we had the guide to ourselves. And he started telling us stories, because in his free time, he would do rescues. And he told us 90% of the people they would rescue are men 30 and under. He said 90% of the snake bites they would treat are men 30 and under. And of those 90%, 95% of those snake bites were bites to the hands or face. These are not bites to the feet or ankles, which gives you an idea of what was going on right before the snake had had enough. Because it takes a brain that can't compute consequences to think a selfie with a snake is a good idea. Right? They have a joke. What are the first words of English that a snake learns? And it's, dude, hold my beer. So this is truly the last part of the brain to come online. Your emotions come online around birth. Then there's the oldest part of the brain. It's often called the reptile brain or the R complex, fully functional in utero. We share this with every creature on the planet. It's what keeps us alive. It's what keeps us breathing. Like, without it, we're not here. Without this, we're not human. Without this, we're not alive. This, however, it truly has reptilian wiring. It does not think. It associates. So this starts even in the womb. I'm here. It's like this. These must be related. Like, if you've ever had a restaurant you really like, and you've been there many times, and then you go just once and you get food poisoning, anytime after that, if you think about that restaurant, like, what happens? There's an instinctive, the association is so strong, one trial learning. So kids are making these kind of associations from conception on. So a child can be in the womb. If the parents are stressed, there's no thinking, but there's no cognition, but there's, I'm here, there's stress, these must be related. I must be the cause of stress. Life must be stressful. I must be too much. Like, that all starts, those associations get made and laid down like railroad tracks, even before birth. So most of the things that you believe about yourself and the world, actually almost all of it starts as associations like that. And pretty much all of it, most of it's in place by 3, pretty much all of it in place by 6 years old.
Wow.
Your big beliefs about yourself, what you deserve, what the world is like, how safe the world is, how okay it is, how okay you are, those are pretty much done by 6. Now, in a perfect world, when we hit 18, our brain would like reopen, for an upgrade. But unlike your phone, your brain is not designed to update itself. So even though we keep growing, we keep expanding, we keep experiencing, the things that we learn later do not revise those original train tracks. They're stored in a different part of the brain. So this is why we can go out, we can start to take courses and, go to workshops that talk about expanding, into abundance, and we still keep having the same experience. It's, if you're 30 years old, imagine a building with 30 stories. The first 3 to 6 stories, whether they're above ground or below, are the foundation of the building. If somebody decides, they go to a workshop, oh my God, so much is possible. And so they expand the 30th floor, but without expanding the base, like, that's not stable. It's not sustainable. Any engineer will tell you, not a good idea. However, if you expand the base, then the entire structure can support more. So, but to expand the base, you have to actually access the parts of the brain that were developing when those original train tracks got laid down.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the things I end up doing with people a lot, whether it's in a workshop or one-on-one, is accessing those original train tracks and then revising them, making new associations. But it's got to happen in the parts of the brain that were holding the original associations.
Wow. Can we actually get into that, Michelle? I'm
Sure.
so fascinated by this. And the reticular activating system.
Yes.
That's one part that comes to mind, which is a very powerful center. And I'd love to hear about that as well. For
yes. The reticular activating system, the old RAS. It is a complex system in your brain that is designed to look for what it's already looking for. So an example I use, because most people have had this example, is if you're thinking of buying a new car and you decide, you know what, I think I'd like a Jaguar because you've got too much money and you don't care if it runs. Overnight, the roads and parking lots of your town and village like fill up with Jaguars. Suddenly they are everywhere. So one of two things happened. Either overnight, everybody else went out and bought your car, or your brain is noticing them in a way it didn't before. It literally filters. Pregnant women tell me this. Pregnant women tell me the world is filled with pregnant women. Or women who want to be pregnant tell me the world is filled with pregnant women. I never see them. Right?
Wow.
My brain is not filtering for them. And primarily what the brain uses to filter is our belief structure, which are our original associations. So if you meet somebody who says, well, this is just the way you do business, that's just the way it is. What they're telling you is the filters they have running based on beliefs. You know, you have to sacrifice. You have to do things you don't want to do to make business. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard, blah, blah, blah. These are all, none of these are true. They're not cosmically true, but they are beliefs that are stabilized. And so we only allow in what confirms that, and we literally filter out what doesn't. So I was working with a woman once. She was wanting to work on relationship, and she had some very unuseful beliefs about men. So we changed those, and 2 weeks later, she wrote me an email. She said, what the hell's going on with all the men in the world? They're all being so nice to me. Like when the filters changed, her experience changed like immediately.
Yeah.
She was meeting, first off, different men who behaved differently, but even the men that she knew were responding differently because her system was allowing in, you know, more of the experience she wanted and not only sorting for everything that confirmed her worst fears.
So how can we start utilizing this very powerful center to start filtering in the things that we want and that we desire, and kind of get past the firewall of beliefs and stories getting in our way?
Yeah. And I get the question a lot. Can you give our, you know, listeners 3 tips? And it's a little like saying somebody has a brain tumor. Can you give them 3 tips on what to do? It's like, well, find somebody who knows how to, you know, I don't mean this to be self-serving. Find somebody who knows how to like usefully treat a brain tumor. So because you cannot be conscious of your own unconscious beliefs, they are by definition invisible to you. So I've been doing this work for 25 years. When I have something up, I go see somebody else.
Wait, Michelle, hold on one second. That is throwing me for a loop. You just said we can't be conscious of our unconscious beliefs.
Yeah.
Yet, oh my God, can you just drive that teaching home a little more? Only because that is kind of, it is a little contradictory to what I have come to learn about reprogramming our own subconscious mind, right? Like with affirmations, or Abraham Hicks talks about how a thought after like 60 something seconds, like,
or 17, I think she says,
or 17. Yeah. Like that's, after that, it gains momentum. And so how, expand on that, please.
Yes, absolutely. This is a fantastic question, Suzaida. So first off, none of us have one belief about anything because we don't have one association about anything. So kids, when they're growing up, they will have some association of things being good and some associations of things being not good. So almost everybody has contradictory beliefs. Some that, oh, life is good, I'm okay, and some of life is hard and I'm not okay. These are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are automated. It is software. So here's the thing about affirmations. Let's imagine you have a fire hose running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of ice cold water. And you have an eyedropper of hot water because you want to warm up the water. And so you spend like 15 minutes dropping hot water into that fire hose. It will temporarily make it slightly warmer, but as soon as you stop, you still have, it doesn't change the fact that there's a fire hose running. So it's better than not doing it. I will say that, absolutely. And yes, when you think a thought, the thought now exists, and every thought you think then begins to think in and of itself. It begins to have thoughts. But here's the thing, most of the thoughts we are having, we're not aware we're having. Most of them are not conscious. Consciously, you can pay attention to 5 to 9 things at a time. 5 to 9, that's what you can do consciously. Unconsciously, your system is processing 2 million things per second.
Wow.
And it is running an entire system of reality stabilizers, which we call beliefs. So it is the long way around to try and consciously override. When you change the stuff that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, this is when people start to notice, like, oh my God, what's up with men in the world? All of a sudden, my income doubled in a week. How did that happen? Right? Because I didn't do anything differently. I'm not anti-affirmation. As a matter of fact, for a long time, that's all we had. But doing affirmations is a little like if your computer software is doing you something you don't want it to do, and so you decide to do affirmations. It is easier to get the software revised, right? Than to try and affirm into reality. And again, I'm not making affirmations wrong. It's just so much harder. It takes so much longer because you're fighting everything else that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Thank you. Thank you for elaborating more on that.
Yeah.
Okay, now back to Shaunae's question.
Yes. What was your question, Shaunae?
Oh, no, I don't think I had a question other than how does the reticular activating system go into all this and reprogramming the mind, and how can we actually start to reprogram these things?
Right.
Because this thing that just threw us for a loop, like we can't consciously reprogram something that's in the behind the scenes of our awareness. So how can we start to shift that?
Right. Well, this is going to sound self-serving, and I don't mean it that way at all. This is part of why I wrote kind of the Money Magic book, is because I know there's people who are never going to work with me. They're never going to make it to a workshop. So I did put some of the tools in there that are designed to let people get access to the original patterning that's in the way and start to revise it, start to make new associations in the brain, because that's what's required. You need new associations to go, new actually wiring, new little neurons to make friends in the parts of the brain that are holding the original patterning. This is what does it the most elegantly. Like the most common thing I hear from people is that, particularly around tax time, I start getting all these thank yous for people who say, oh my God, we had our best year ever, or our income doubled or tripled. We had no idea until they did their taxes. They said, because we didn't do anything differently. We didn't do anything differently. But when the wiring changed, the reality changed. Because we don't perceive things as they are. We perceive them through our filters.
Right. That's so fascinating. So making the conscious decision over and over again and repeating it is that what reinforces that glue we're talking about in between those neurons to actually reinforce those connections?
Well, it can. Again, it's the really long way around. If you know how to do it right, it's a one trial learning, just the way the original stuff was often one trial learning. But you have to know how to stabilize the neural net that you want and connect it to the neural net where it's needed. We usually do that with something called anchoring.
Mm.
So usually when I'm working with somebody, I will ask them a question. I'll say, "Oh, so you want this?" And I'll ask a question that will cause them to kind of reveal the neurology that's in the way. And then there's a little bit of a process to get that from unconscious into conscious awareness. Usually we end up, when they were young, or quite often people have imported patterns and experiences from family members. It was not even their experience originally.
Mm-hmm.
This happens half the time that I'm working with people. It's not even their experience. It's their mothers or their fathers or their grandfathers or their great aunts. And so in that case, those are particularly hard to change, because if it were your patterning, you'd have way more access. But as long as you're running something, it's like if you're rebroadcasting a feed from CNN, you can't edit it. Not live. It's they're the ones that can edit it because their feed. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so a lot of times we have this feed running as though it is current in our experience, and it's actually our mothers, our fathers, somebody else's in the families, quite often somebody we never even met. That's where it gets really kind of crazy.
Now, go ahead, Erin.
I think this is all so fascinating, the subconscious mind and how much it really determines our reality. Mm-hmm. And I guess I just wanted to ask you, Michelle, a little bit about your background and how you got into doing this work. And
mm-hmm. Yeah, not in a way anybody would ever guess. Right? I was a theater major. I did environmental like a master's program, environmental ed. I painted houses in Maine. I painted scenery off Broadway. I coached softball. I mean, nothing that would ever imply I had any credentials for doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
And I'm not a therapist, actually. I'm not. But when I was in 1994, I was in my 30s, and that's when I encountered this work, the NLP work. And I realized that I couldn't really have done anything. I couldn't have done it earlier than that. I just wasn't mature enough. Mm-hmm. There may be 20-something-year-olds who are mature enough. I was not that. And I had a lot of stuff to get worked out. The first 2 years, I had 12 sessions on me. And in addition to going through the training and having other people work on me, I had a lot that had to get worked out. But in the course of learning it, I learned from some brilliant people. Carl Buchheit, my main teacher, and then I was also taught by Jonathan Rice and Andrea Stallsworth Rice, both of whom were actual trained therapists. And so I learned a lot about how beliefs get stabilized and developmental stages, and what kind of decisions and associations and beliefs kids are making at different ages. Because a lot of times you can almost predict what the belief will be based on what was happening at a certain age. Because there's windows when the system is available to learn a specific thing. And those windows open and close. So there was, I had some basic psychological training in college, but what I've mostly learned from is the 25 years of doing with this and learning from people who had been doing it for 40 years. Mm-hmm. And so what we tell people is what really matters is not whether this is true or real. What matters is, what do you experience? Does this change? We don't care if it's theoretically true. All we care about is, does it work? Mm-hmm. And we have a very high percentage. Not everybody gets a change. There are things in heaven and earth we have not yet figured out. Mm-hmm. But it is astonishing how much of things that people assume are not changeable are easily revisable when you know how.
Mm-hmm. Now, Michelle, I'd like to steer us into the direction of your workshop, your hugely popular workshop, Money Magic. And one question I have for us is, what are some of the very common beliefs that people hold with money that prevent them from being able to receive money?
Right. Right. Well, especially in the US, although it's not confined to the US, there is this belief that you have to work hard to make money. This is so not true. How many people do you know who are working so hard who are not making any money?
I've been there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
How many people do you know or know of who have a lot of money who frankly are not working that hard? Because there's a lot of them. Okay. Let's see. You have to be really smart to make money. So not true. There are broke geniuses all over the world. And there are people with a ton of money who are not going to win any like Mensa awards. You have to invent the next big thing. Oh my God, so not true. Broke inventors and innovators all over. Usually the people who make money off an innovation are not the people who came up with the innovation. So there's those. You have to sacrifice to make money. Oh my God. Again, how many people do you know sacrificing, and really not making money? So there are those kind of beliefs. Then there's a deeper level, and one of the most precious things I get to do with people is there's these beliefs about our worth, what we think we deserve. Because what we think we deserve is a direct corollary of what we think our worth is. I meet almost nobody with a really robust sense of their worth. And sometimes people will cite famous politicians who, who they say seem very self-confident, and who are arrogant. That is not self-worth. Real arrogance does not show up as actually, arrogance is insecurity that's inside out.
Yeah.
True self-worth, when people have it, is like the experience of being in love. Not only do you feel great, but everything and everyone around you looks more beautiful. That's what the experience of real self-worth is like. It is not arrogant. It's incredibly precious. And almost nobody makes it to adulthood with a really robust sense of that kind of worth. Sometimes it's because, your beliefs about your worth, those are pretty much in place by 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
By 3 years old, most kids have decided how worthy they are. Now, sometimes that sense of worth is impaired because parents have told them, who do you think you are? Sometimes parents have been incredibly loving, but the parents themselves do not have a sense of their worth, so they can't really communicate it to their kids. Because kids are not paying very much attention to what parents say. They are paying a ton of attention to how parents feel. They kind of live in the sea of their parents' feelings. And so if a parent is not sure of their own worth, that is part of the reality for that kid.
Okay.
And so that getting to be with people when they start to get a little bit more, or hopefully a lot more, of a sense of their actual worth. We're the only species on this planet who does this, by the way. Like I said, I have 4 cats and a dog. When we go to offer them treats, not one of them is like, have I been cat enough today? Do I deserve the treats? Like, will the other cats think I'm wrong for what? This is not a problem.
Oh, yeah, I love that example. That is so simple and understandable.
I have a redwood tree right there. It's hundreds of years old. It's hundreds of feet tall. As far as I can tell, it is not like, ooh, am I taking up too much space? Am I too big? Like, this, all of nature is okay with its own existence. It's part of why it's so nice to be in nature. Can you imagine walking through the woods if all of nature was like, oh, am I okay? Can I be here? Is it? Ooh, that would be horrible.
Oh, wow.
Complete chaos and disaster. Nature knows how beautiful it is, right?
And it doesn't have an arrogance problem. It doesn't question its right to be here. We question our right to be here. But here's the thing, that if you take nothing else away from this, I hope you can hear this. If the universe had wanted somebody else in your spot, a different gender, a different person, it would have called somebody else here. Like you didn't slip in across the border. Like if you're here, there's a spot for you here, and it's your spot. It's your spot.
Yeah.
I want everybody to just take a moment to really seek that in. And for people who are going to tune into this later, that is absolutely powerful. Like the energy of that is completely elevated.
This is your spot. The universe had a place for you, regardless of whether your parents were planning you coming, regardless of what state your parents were in. This spot, your spot, was always meant for you. Always.
That's hitting.
Yeah, can I ask the audience to comment? Like, can you just share what did you just hear Michelle say? Can we get you guys to put into words in the comment section what you understood Michelle to just say about worthiness? I think that's really, really powerful to make sure that lands. That was so poetic. And Michelle, I'd like to also ask you, can you put into context how our limiting beliefs around money, what that means in terms of energy?
Yes, energy how? So I answer the question you're actually wanting me to answer. Otherwise I could be off.
Yeah. Well, energy in terms of how, like, what, because we're all, everything is energy, right? And so how does our limiting beliefs around money affect us energetically in terms of our frequency? You know, a low frequency, a high frequency, a frequency of fear, frequency of love. Are you able to speak in that context?
Yes. It's one of the things I started talking about at the very beginning when the world was panicking over, the coronavirus, is that virus exists in a very specific frequency. All things exist in a very specific frequency. And the frequency it exists in is a frequency of both fear and despair. So when we had to travel during that, and so one of the things I did was I felt in for the frequency where it did not exist or where it was ineffectual, and that was a frequency of love and awe, AWE. And so because in the past I always get sick when I fly if I'm in coach because there's just too many people nearby, but I just didn't want to deal with that whole. Basically, I wasn't worried about getting the flu. It's the whole public isolation, and that was just energy I didn't want to deal with. So I just amped up that frequency of love and awe, and I got so hot, my face was like burning for most of the flight, but I didn't get sick on either flight. Because it's not a frequency that's conducive to those kind of viruses. And as humans, we exist in multiple frequencies simultaneously. So it's a multi-layered answer. But kind of like you have more than one belief, like some of it, all of us have some beliefs that we're okay, or you wouldn't be here. You'd either be dead or living under a bridge, with your shopping cart. And all of us have some beliefs that we're not okay or can't get what we want, or you wouldn't be on this watching this. You'd be out, I don't know, kite surfing or whatever it is. So our experience tends to be sort of the net out of all these contradictory beliefs. So the more beliefs that get revised from I'm not okay, I'm not worthy, people don't want what I have, etc., into more useful beliefs, then the more of our experience starts to tip towards what we want.
Useful.
And we don't want to change everything. All of us have, so many beliefs. We don't want to change them all at once. That is too much. I got this 60th anniversary commemorative ceramic cup from Disney World and Disneyland. And we had it in our cabinet. And it gets a little cold in our kitchen. And one Christmas, one of the kids took it and it was cold and they poured boiling water in it. And so it's got now all these cracks in it. The temperature changed too much. And so we don't want to change all our beliefs at once. Okay. It's too much. And so it's better if it's a progression. It can be a much faster progression than it used to be. where you used to have to basically die and get reborn to get new beliefs, but then you have to go through middle school again and that whole nightmare. And thank God we can do this. So now your question was about our frequency and how it affects our energy.
Okay. Yeah.
So our frequencies and our energy will be partially a result of our beliefs about ourselves and the world. The more beliefs you have that you're not safe, or it's not safe, or the world's not safe, the lower the frequency. And I don't mean to say lower as though it's like a judgment. I mean, red is no less valid a color than ultraviolet, even though it's a lower frequency, right? So I don't want it to sound like a judgment, but the parts of us that are in fear, they vibrate at a lower frequency. And so it will tend to attract people and experiences that are a better match for that frequency. One of my favorite examples of this is, I don't know if everybody who's watching is in the United States, so I'll just say the first American president was a man named George Washington. Before the Revolutionary War between the Americans and the British, he was fighting in the French Indian War. So he was fighting against the French and the Indians. One of the Indians, one of the chiefs on that side, said they picked him out right away as a leader. Now, for one thing, he was like 6'3". That's huge in those days. The average height was, I think, like 5'5". So he was big and he was clearly in charge. So they had all their sharpshooters trained on him. They killed people all around him. They shot 2 house horses right out from under him. He had 4 bullet holes in his coat, 1 in his hat, shell fragments in his hair, not a scratch on him. The Indian guy said, we finally realized we could not hit him. So the frequency we are at, if you're not vibrating at one of those lower frequencies cannot hit you.
Absolutely.
And the more disparate the frequencies get, the less even you exist in the same plane. When the frequencies are close, you can still see the reality, but it's not necessarily affecting you. When the frequencies are not even close, those two realities do not intersect. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And okay. I would like to ask, what is something that we all can take away today to start fundamentally transforming our relationship with money?
Oh, with money. Okay. With money. Okay. And then if you think about it, ask me at the end with life. Okay. Well, let me start with money.
Okay. With life. Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that I have noticed over the years, especially there's a certain thing that I do in the Money Magic Workshop, I started to notice that when you take away all the projections that people put onto money, their own beliefs, their family beliefs, when you start to clear all that stuff out of the energy of money, the energy of money always shows up the same. It shows up as the energy of blessings. Of blessings.
Wow.
It is one of the ways the universe wants to love us.
Beautiful.
And so when you understand that, so many of the old beliefs about money make no sense. Like blessings are the root, or love of blessings is the root of all evil. Makes no sense. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a blessed man to enter heaven. It makes no sense. And by the way, that's a whole thing about the eye of the needle thing. Just someday you can look it up. It actually refers to a door in the wall of Jerusalem that was called the eye of the needle. It was a very, very small door because they would close the gates at night in Jerusalem to keep out bandits. And so but people would sometimes get locked out. So they had this one little door. You could get through it, but you couldn't go through on horseback or camelback. You had to so it's actually saying more about humility. You had to get really low. It would keep an army from coming in, but make sure stray travelers could come in. It was called the eye of the needle. So when they say it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, that's what they're talking about. Not that it's impossible. but that is, it's more about humility. That's an Old Testament kind of thing. So the energy of money truly is the energy of blessings. And so the question is, how much are you willing to let the universe bless you? And there are so many ways it can bless us other than money, but it is one of them. It is one of them. Being poor doesn't make you more spiritual. In fact, if anything, it preoccupies so much of your awareness that it makes it hard to focus on the things that matter most.
Okay. Thank you.
It's so much easier to be abundant than it is to be in lack. It's so much easier to be abundant in abundance than it is to be in lack.
Yeah, lack takes a real toll. It's not that it's impossible to have a happy life with lack, but why? Like, this is not how the universe operates. If you've ever been in spring, it's like, if you've ever planted a zucchini, you will know. Abundance is kind of the way of things.
It's nature's natural state.
Yeah.
Well, what was that, Erin?
Said it's our natural state of being.
Yeah.
Nature.
Yes. And
we are
part, and part of the trouble that most people have is that they have fear running and they have imagination. So they try to figure out how they can have enough money to cover every possible thing that could go wrong for the rest of their life. Now, let me tell you a conversation that has never happened. Someone has never sat down in their 40s with an oxygen planner to talk about how much oxygen they will need to store up for the rest of their life. Are you going to work out a lot? Because we're going to need more if that's the case. How long are you planning to live? You going to watch a lot of scary movies? Like, we assume that what we need will be there. We take what we need when we need it. Sometimes we need more, sometimes we need less. We don't presuppose a lack of oxygen in the way we presuppose a lack of money. And so we try to store it up against every possible eventuality, because we don't yet have, most of us do not yet have the experience that we're actually in control. You don't need to have it all now. I mean, I love to go to Europe, but if I got off the plane in Paris and they gave us all the food we were going to eat for the whole time when we got off the plane, that would be a miserable experience. Like, so one of the first steps to really, truly living in abundance is knowing that it will be there. You don't have to stockpile. It actually makes it much easier. Because if you're not used to having $10 million and you suddenly get $10 million, do you know how much time and attention it takes to see to that, to tend to that? Like, it starts to preoccupy an enormous amount of space. They've actually done studies. The people who report the greatest levels of satisfaction in life are usually making about $250,000 a year. Now, I don't know if that's California. I would guess it was more the middle of the country than California. But either way, it's not people who are making 2.5 million who are reporting the greatest amounts of satisfaction. Not that they can't, because it is possible at any level. But the biggest thing in our way is not lack. It's fear, which shows up as lack.
Now, I feel like that's a great segue to what might be this last question, or the second to last question. And so, what is something that we can walk away from to start fundamentally transforming our lives?
Well, thing one, I would always say is, if you can, find somebody who knows how to revise the things that are in your way and get help with that. The second thing would be to start focusing on the experience you want to have, regardless of how you think it has to happen. We often cut ourselves off at the knees by, I want this much money because what I want to do with it is this and this and this. Well, do you want the money or do you want this and this and this? Because those could come in a million different ways that won't necessarily. We get lazy and we start to think everything has to come through money. When sometimes the best things don't come through money, they come through in other ways. So getting clear on what you would like and letting go of how you think it has to happen. is good on a couple ways, because the more you do it, the more it does start to kind of redirect your reticular activating system. Your system will start to, it's not as effective as revising the beliefs, but it's still way more effective than not doing it. Your system will start to sort for things that confirm that. Also, as I said earlier, there's physics to back me up on this. When you think a thought, that thought begins to think in and of itself. And so the more thoughts you have of, being happy, of being excited, of being alive in the ways that matter to you, the more of those thoughts you're actually creating, which you're thinking more of those kind of thoughts. It's almost like if you've ever seen yeast bloom. These days, a lot of people don't make bread. So, but if you get, when you're making bread, you get warm water, you put yeast in and a tiny bit of sweetness. And if you watch it for the first minute, it's like nothing happens. And then you start to see these little, like little clouds forming. And then at a certain point, those clouds form more clouds. I was like, and this is kind of what our thoughts do. And we don't experience our thoughts as substantial in this dimension. They feel insubstantial. But in fourth, fifth, sixth,
Bless you, Erin.
in fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh dimensions, they are actually substantial. They have substance. So the more beautiful thoughts you think, the more beauty you are literally creating, and it expands.
Yeah.
Conversely, like the more scared you are, the more scared thoughts you have, the more of those you create. But that's okay. It can all be revised. There's no doomsday scenario necessary, just so you know.
So how would we actually go about doing that? Revising that thought. So, okay, let me give an example.
Okay.
So I was paying bills the other day, and I was like, I found myself just like so not very happy about paying bills, because I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to run out of money, for instance.
Okay. Well, that's the part you're actually not happy about. It's not the paying bills. It's the fear of running out of money.
Yeah. So then how in that case, what would have been a good way for me to change my experience and the energy with money?
I know you're going to get frustrated with me. I'll say it anyway. Best way would be have somebody work on you to change that fear of running out. That was like to rewrite that software. That's ideal. Because otherwise you are a little bit fighting with yourself. And as my friend Carl says, when you're fighting with yourself, who actually wins? Susanita, Susanita, who was it who was most afraid of running out of money? Where'd you learn that from?
Oh, yeah, parents.
Yeah.
Parents.
Yeah. Both of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask where
I'm surrounded by Philippines.
Philippines. Okay.
Philippines. Yeah, I think it's a total cultural thing.
Yeah. Well, were they there were your ancestors there during the war?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the Philippines suffered so disproportionately during the Second World War, by the way. I think the entire United States had about 450,000 deaths for the Second World War. The Philippines had between, depending on who you talk to, 1 to 2 million. Tiny little Philippines.
Yeah.
So they had occupation. And with occupation comes always shortage, tremendous shortage, starvation, etc. So that survival threat will be running on two channels. It will be running in the family associations in their neurology, and it will also be running kind of in the family consciousness. A simple thing you can do, it's not going to change everything, but it can start to help. Because I believe you're in San Diego.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In the United States, nobody becomes homeless overnight, for one thing. Like some people will say, oh, I'm afraid if this happens, I'll be homeless. No, to actually become homeless, it's like 1,000 different decisions and things that have to happen. There is so much backup and so much support. There's so many options that people can have where they're not starving under a bridge.
Yeah.
So thing one would be to get a sense, your adult sense, that actually there are a million different ways this can actually work out.
Mm.
And when you get that feeling is what matters most. Like give yourself a little squeeze, someplace you wouldn't normally squeeze, and imagine stepping into the body of the younger Suzaita. You have to imagine being in her body, not looking at her, and then squeeze that spot again. If you do this properly, it will take what the adult brain knows and create a neural connection between that and the younger parts of you.
Mm. Wow. As you said that, I feel such a tingling on my legs right now, on my legs, like my shin, the inside of my shins.
Yeah.
It's like I'm tingling right there.
That's because the old beliefs, you've all heard of fight flight, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The technical name for fight flight is sympathetic arousal. That's when the heart rate's elevated, the breathing shallow, rapid. It pulls all the circulation from the extremities and sends it to the heart and lungs and big muscles. Digestion gets taken offline. Immune system gets dialed down. It does everything it can to get away from a predator. For an antelope out in the savannah, if they're running from a predator, that interaction is very short. One way or the other, it's over in like a couple minutes. Either the antelope gets away and its system resets. It has a parasympathetic reset, shakes it off, and it's done. Or it doesn't get away and it resets as puma. But either way, it's a short interaction. Human beings, we can be in that sympathetic arousal forever because we remember. We can imagine pumas. Well, yeah, there's no puma here, but what if there was a puma? Oh my God, what if there was a puma? So what if there's not enough? See, this is something an antelope is not troubled by. Either there's a lion or there's not a lion. There's not a is there a lion? We don't see one, but there could be one. Get ready. The imagination is our curse and our blessing. Once we get to know how to use it, it's our blessing. But if it's fueled by fear, the imagination causes us no end of stress. And so what your system just did, that tingling, is some part of you that was in sympathetic arousal reset, and actually blood flow started to go back to places where it wasn't. That tingling is what you get, right? When you were sitting on your foot or something, and then blood starts to go back, it gets tingly. Yeah. So some part of your system just reset, and some blood flow.
That's so powerful.
That have been stuck for decades.
So yeah, this dialogue, it activated, it triggered something inside of me. It's healing something inside of me. Wow. And for other people, I can imagine if, for the audience, if you're relating to any of this, you're responding in a similar way.
Yeah. And the more of these that you do, the more of these old things that you get revised, it doesn't just help the thing you're working on. It also helps like your digestion, your immune system, because we have part of the reason our digestion and immune systems are so compromised is we have accumulated decades worth of like fight flight that's still running.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we're trying to operate on top of that. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Erin, Shanae, are there any questions you'd like to ask Michelle? We have about 6 minutes.
This has just been so powerful. I mean, I don't have any questions right now. I'm just processing everything that you've given us in terms of money magic. So,
yeah, and I just was thinking about how much fear is being pumped into everyone right now. Yes. What's going on? Everyone's in fight or flight. When you go out in the world, and anyways, I just think that what you've talked about is going to be such an incredible tool, powerful tool for people to take in who are listening to this right now.
I hope so, because so much of what has caused distress for people this year is feeling like they don't have control. They're not in control of their physical safety. They're not in control of their well-being on both a physical level and a kind of political level. But you can have the experience that you want. You can be okay no matter who's in office. You can be okay no matter what bacteria or viruses are flying around. Like, you can actually be okay. So the question I started to answer, and then you said, what do you want people to know? I think it was about money. And I said, well, ask me, what is it about life? So one thing I would say is there's a lot of people asking what I think is the wrong question these days. They're asking what's true. Is a conspiracy true? Did he win the election? Is there really a virus? Is there not a virus? I think asking what's true is the wrong question. Because is light a particle or a wave? The right question is, what would you like? What would you like? It doesn't matter what's true. Anything can be true. What would you like?
Yeah.
What
Anything can be true. Yeah.
Yes. What shows up for you is what you choose, whether it's a particle or a wave. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting how some of these these things that we're talking about come down to this idea that, we have a choice. Yeah. That's been such a recurring theme in our work that we've been doing too. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation.
Anything that makes you happy, that fills your heart with joy, is not only good for you, it's good for all of us. Because every thought you have that is filled with joy, more joy exists, right? And the more your system is looking for and inviting in joy, or fill in what matters to you. It's not joy for everybody.
Right. There's a beautiful ripple effect.
Yes. Even if you're just in your house, you don't realize it, but you're creating ripples in the universe. Every good thing that happens to you is good for all of us.
Beautiful. Well, Michelle, thank you so much. This has been an incredible, very, very, very powerful interview. And we appreciate you so much for taking the time. Is there a last piece of wisdom or nugget that you'd like to impart to our audience? I mean, you've said so much already.
And also, if you want to let people know where they can find you and
that would be great.
Sure. I'll say that first, because I will forget when I tell you the last thing. So you can always find me at my website, michellemastersnlp.com. If that's hard to remember, you can get there with Change Without Struggle. We'll also get you there. And ideally, I will update it to show what workshops I'm doing when I decide what workshops I'm doing. The last thing I would say, over the past 10 years as I've been traveling around the world, and especially the last 2, I was noticing this huge acceleration of consciousness. Huge. As a matter of fact, I had this recording I listened to from February 17th of this year where I said, I don't understand. The change in consciousness has accelerated so much, and on the surface, everything looks the same. Well, within 2 weeks, so something had to happen, because the acceleration of human consciousness is expanding so fast. Something had to happen so that the 3D world can catch up. And I don't think that what's going on now is counter to it. I think it's part of it. If you've ever remodeled any part of your house, from like the first day of the remodel to almost the last day, it's utter chaos. It's utter chaos, and you question, why did I ever start this? But at the end, then you've got something new and so much better. We're in the middle of a massive remodel. And so the chaos of it is almost inevitable, but it is part of the good things coming that we've all been wanting. Whatever your political party, whatever kind of, we've all been wanting something really precious, and it's on its way, whether it looks that way or not. So
Beautiful.
be not afraid.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for taking that stand, Michelle.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome.
Well, that was beautiful. Everyone, we hope you've enjoyed this. Have an incredible day or night wherever you guys are in the world, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.